Hello. Hello. Hello and welcome back. Hello and welcome back to the Sophisticulture podcast. Hello and welcome back to the Sophisticulture podcast. We're in a brand new place. I am coming to you live from where the past and the future meet, because there is nothing but the present. And today we're gonna really actually get into like music shit. I'm gonna talk a lot about like music production, the current state of the industry as it stands, as far as I understand it. Again, I'm not like sitting here as like a business analyst. I'm sitting here as someone who's a small independent artist within a system. And that's going to include like the Super Bowl and Beyonce and also TikTok and it's how it's interacting and how it's affecting music production currently. And then for the patrons, I'm going to get into my process of songwriting, my process of production, whether or not that's been affected by TikTok for me specifically, and also what I discovered as I was going through a ton of old demos yesterday, which was a bad idea because I shot way past my bedtime, and today was shot. And that was a bad idea, but we stay silly, you know, and that's really the important thing. But first, before we get into any of that stuff, it occurred to me that on the live stream, no one mentioned Fantastic Four. So now I have to do it. So, oh God, so many takes, so little time. I'm trying to think what the most important take is to have, other than it looks sickening. I love it. The backlash has been confusing. I'm confused. I think a lot of us are confused because this is like Marvel. Like Sarah Finn, you know, before that post it dropped, was patting herself on the back going, I really ate with this shit. And then they dropped the poster and like most of us are like, this is CUNTY, right? Vanessa Kirby, like something about it clicked as a visual. I said this on my side account, but I'll say it again. The visual clicked it in place for me. When it was a rumor, I saw Pedro, I saw Ebon or Abon, I don't know, but the cousin from The Bear. I saw those two perfectly. I was like, I get it. I understand the vision. But I was actually envisioning a very different Pedro character than the one I now realize that they're up to. I was envisioning a bit more of I don't know. I was envisioning the stonier side of him. Even though Reed is very enigmatic, he's enigmatic in a more, he's enigmatic in a Javier Pena way-ish, as far as I have interpreted him. Instead, they're really going kind of the Maxwell Lord way, which is kind of also partially the reference I was putting from, but not in terms of charisma, more in terms of determination. But the charisma also, it's just an illustration. But the point of a poster like that is to give you the vibe. And the vibe I was getting was very, he doesn't know he's the bad guy. He's very ha-ha, kiki, smiling in their faces and fucking shit up, which I think is even cooler than what I was imagining. The Joseph Quinn and the Vanessa Kirby of it all, I was just like, I'll wait. Mostly because I never want to be like you weirdo idiots that make a decision about this stuff too early and have to backtrack. I don't ever want to have to backtrack if I don't have to. I don't want to have to lock in my opinion with no basis other than I don't vibe with it unless I'm 100% sure that I'm okay backtracking it later. So I didn't get it as a rumor. I didn't get it as a casting rumor. But I said, in writing, whenever asked, whenever probed about it, I would say, hey, I don't get it. I don't see it, but go for it. It surprised me. I love for things to just work out. Like, you know, and who was really checking for Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man? You know, you don't ever want to be the girl caught out like that, right? So I was like, Okay, let's go. Let's have fun. Let's have a good time. It's going to be festive. Make it work and I'll be there, right? I'm going to be there anyway. You know, my freaking husband's in it, right? So then the poster drops and I look at Joseph Quinn and Vanessa Kirby in the geometry of it all. And I was like, oh, I see it. I see it. And I pride myself on the fact that, please leave me alone, Central London. I really hope you can't hear these sirens. I pride myself on the fact that I've gotten it this early because some of the girlies still don't see it. So I see myself as being very smart for getting it. Clearly, you guys have not learned from the Will Poulter era, where there was this whole thing about, Will Poulter's not handsome enough to be in a Marvel movie, and then you guys ate that shit up. And you still eat that shit up. You love Will Poulter. You love that man. And as it was, you already had your whole let's ruin Joseph Quinn's life by being too thirsty on main. You already did all that shit. It's over. It's been happened. Now you just get to enjoy. And still there's a problem. There's a problem you guys don't want. You know, that we're all very confused. Like, I don't see how Pedro Pascal could be playing Reed Richards. You don't? That's really embarrassing for you. That's really embarrassing for you. You don't see it now? After all this? After the illustration of it all? After the friggin'... Me, my homegirls, and my homeboys are very confused right now. Very confused. Now, if you're I've checked out of Marvel girly, if you're I'm a Marvel Comics fan and I don't like what the MCU has done with the girls, that's different. That's different. But if you were checking for this movie before, if you are an MCU person, if you're an MCU person and you just live to hate, go ahead, enjoy. But if you were checking for this movie and now you are not checking for this movie, if you were checking for the people within the movie and now you're not checking for the people within the movie, it's a poster, my dude. What? Like, what can you glean from a poster? It's fine. Do what you want. I'm not the police. But as I have always said, I am still judging you. You know, I don't need the authority of the law to sit here and look at you funny. Because I will. It's a poster. Everybody's losing their minds about a poster. Not even an actual poster for the movie. They've not made the movie yet. The movie's not even been made yet. It's not even happened yet. It's just a little kind of promo-y casting announcement poster for Valentine's Day. Like, and it served. It was a serve. That poster was a serve. But that's just me and my WandaVision loving ass standing once more. Now, before anybody goes, but WandaVision had a terrible ending. Yeah. In case you forgot, the reason WandaVision kind of ran off the rails was because it was being made during a global pandemic. And before any of my COVID conscious girlies are like, it's not over. No, it's not over. But at the time, it was the beginning of like people were dying and they had to like shut shit down. And then starting everything back up financially is like a whole thing. And so and also it was the Chapek era. I don't count any of the Chapek era. Like the moment that guy left, I was hearing reports from across the internet that the MCU was already better for it, right? And that as the stuff was starting to that it was all starting to the ship was righting itself. Now, here's my confessional. And I make this confessional on the podcast because not many people watch the podcast, so I get to say whatever I want. The thing with the MCU is I think the last thing I saw was Guardians of the Galaxy 3. No, the last thing I saw was like episode 2 of Loki, right? I checked out of Loki, was pretty bored by it. During the strike, you really couldn't get me back to the MCU, which was weird. It was weird, my dude. I kind of took a turn into like, and also I moved. And once I moved, I was going out to the cinema instead of staying home and watching movies or watching TV. So there was less of the Marvel TV shit, and then on top of that, fewer Marvel movies out in the cinema, and of the few that were out in the cinema, none during the strike, pretty much none during the strike as far as I can remember. And then by the time the strike was over, we were boycotting Disney. And so I couldn't see the Marvels. I still haven't seen the Marvels, which I'm sure is actually so much better than everyone's saying it is, because Nia DaCosta is a good filmmaker. And Brie Larson, Tessa Thompson, Tiana Paris. Yeah, Tiana Paris. Because I've been listening to Tiana Taylor. I have Tiana Taylor in my head, Tiana Paris. And Iman Vellani. All good, amazing filmmakers. So I don't doubt that it's a good movie. And one day I will find out. But we're now boycotting Marvel. We're boycotting Disney at the beginning of October, and now we're boycotting Marvel specifically over Sabra. If you don't know the details of that, go look it up. I will not get into the details here because it's a very nuanced thing that has to do with the history of that character in the comics, and not supporting movies that support the premise of that character. Now, I'm always very cautious about boycotts of things before the movie has come out, because it's like, you never, like, I remember, ironically, talking about Pedro Pascal, I remember when there was a whole thing about don't watch The Great Wall, and I think some criticisms had to do with issues with Chinese governmental control, which was a very different debate, because the other debate, which was the much louder debate, Chinese propaganda, by the way, is what I was trying to say, not Chinese governmental control. Chinese, having it be like a propaganda piece. That was a much quieter conversation. The louder conversation, which everyone and myself could accurately dismiss, was this idea that it was some kind of Hollywood piece of high media that was appropriating Chinese culture. And it's like, no, that, I mean, it's just functionally not that. It's being made in China by as far as I understand, Chinese filmmaker. So, oh God, now I have to check that. So I have to stop everything and go check that. Let me check. Why I doubt myself, I don't know. Anyway, yes, Chinese filmmaker made a Chinese film. Now, the other discussion that was happening at the time, and that happens to this day about that movie, I defer to those with better expertise around it. But specifically as it had to do with like appropriation, everybody was like, well, that's silly because it's not appropriation. It's being made by the culture of which it is a part. What's the problem? Oh, white savior story. It's not. And you can't tell it's a white savior story until after you've watched the movie, which is why I'm saying part of what makes this boycott different is partially that there is already an ongoing Disney boycott that has to do with the fact that they have sent supportive aid and funds to the Israeli side of this conflict, and not to the victims of the genocide that is currently happening in Gaza, that is primarily killing en masse children, and that to date is the most deadly conflict, genocide for children, like, on record, and more importantly, the most dangerous place in the world to be a child right now. Disney aligns itself quite fervently with being apolitical and for the rights and safety of children, because it is a family brand, and that it would be silent and have no part in even paying lip service to the amount of children, just the literal amount of children that have been killed, disabled, displaced, that are hungry, that are sick, that have been put in a position to be orphaned, and you know, just like the idea that Disney is doing absolutely nothing. That's boycott number one. Boycott number two is that the history of the character they are putting into New World Order is incredibly insensitive to Palestinians, like deeply insensitive to Palestinians, and I think it's important when these things happen that if there is a boycott of these things, like the difference here, more than any other character, is that by definition, there is no way you can put that character into any story, even if it's a redemptive one, where it is not insensitive to the current conflict that is happening and the conflict that has been going on for 75 years. Functionally, as a character, there is no way that that can occur. There is no movie you can release where that is assuaged. And specifically, more than anything, I don't boycott because a bunch of random people on Twitter say that we should boycott something. I boycott when organizations who are organized, who do research, who are from the communities they advocate for, tell me that something is damaging or potentially insensitive to their community. I listen to that shit. Shouldn't we all? And so when, I think it was BDS that called for this, said, please boycott Marvel because this character is insensitive to Palestinians. It's insensitive to put this into a movie. I listen. I don't need any more. I don't need, I look up the history, and they've given ample evidence of why a boycott here would be effective and why it is a way of standing in solidarity and, more importantly, standing against the insensitivity of a character like that. There's plenty of evidence for it, but once I read it, I didn't need to be told twice. I didn't need caveats. I didn't need anything. That's enough for me. That they would do they would include a character that insensitive, and that there really isn't any way of telling any story, even a redemptive story of that character, that isn't insensitive to that group of people who are currently undergoing a genocide right now, a politically motivated, planned genocide. It's not a conflict, it's not a war, it's not oh my god, how is this happening? It's not a humanitarian crisis, it's a genocide. It's all of those things and a genocide. It's a planned political ethnic cleansing. They started at the top and they worked their way down. There's no getting away from that fact. And that has been the case for 75 years, right? There is just no getting around it. There was no getting around it when America was founded. There's no getting around it when colonization took over the entirety of the British Empire and further beyond, and Africa and all of the I want to say third world, but it's not. We call it now the global south, which is just, I feel like, even worse. It's almost like it's so woke that it's gone around to being insensitive again. The developing world, perhaps, is the better phrase. It's never okay to found anything on ethnic cleansing. I don't see that as being anything debatable. I don't see that as being a humanitarian discussion. I don't see that as being a political debate. It is never okay to found anything, not a state, not safety, not anything. It is never okay to found anything on ethnic cleansing. And if you don't believe this is a current, if you're like, well, how can this be an ethnic cleanse? They started at the top and they have worked their way down, pushing people into another country. That is I don't know how much more geographically clear it can be that a genocide is happening, an ethnic cleansing is happening. Take the ethnic in this area and cleanse it. That's it. There's no debate here. So when people from that community tell me, listen, I know you love Marvel movies, but there is a character that is being put into these movies that, aside from all of the other politics of this character, it's deeply insensitive that they would even try to even given the best reading of what they're doing here, it's still insensitive that this character should be used in a major tentpole franchise, not just during the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, but also because this has been going on 75 years and this character has a history in the comics of defending the homeland and being essentially an Israeli nationalist. It's insensitive, even in a redemptive sense, to try and get that to work in a Marvel movie. Please don't watch your Marvel movies. As painful as it may be, I will have to do that because I cannot abide that insensitivity. And I wouldn't be able to abide myself allowing myself to support someone in a pursuit of that insensitivity. There is just... Okay, so now that we've established that, God, oh my God, do I want them to fix this now? Because I have to see Fantastic Four. With this cast, with that poster, it is killing me. I will have to miss it if nothing is done. Because life is too short for me to put my fun ahead of doing anything I can to advance the cause of freedom for everybody. I only have 100 years here. Am I going to use them kikiing, haha, fun, memes and Marvel movies? Or am I going to have pushed the needle a little bit? Even in a boycott, even just a little boycott. Look at what happened to Starbucks. It's not, and we're about to talk about this with Beyonce, but there is just, Disney, fix it. Disney, 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 fix it. Disney, fix it. Please, Disney, 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 fix it. Please fix it now. I need to see this movie, and just please fix it. And if you don't want to fix it, I can't go and see it. And, you know, my divestment from that is really sad, because it is a franchise and a storytelling enterprise that is formative to me. It's just a deep, 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 deep part of me. The entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, the characters from the comics, the characters in the movies, the filmmakers that made the movies, the rollout of the movies, the format of the cinematic universe, Kevin Feige himself, have been formative to me. I understand everybody has different opinions on that, but up until very recently, this really was a lifeline for me. Like, really, really was a lifeline for me, this franchise. And I would really, really hate to have to leave and remain left and remain gone when this is something that can be addressed, right? Even just some kind of balancing, countervailing aid that is sent to the people in Rafah, the people who are still in Gaza, or across Gaza, that are being bombed across Gaza, something to aid the children, something to protect. Like, they are currently in the most dangerous place for a child in the world, and any little bit of something that Disney does toward those children, towards even just acknowledging their suffering and sending some kind of aid, anything, just the tiniest thing would be enough. And then on top of that, I don't know what BDS are calling for in terms of Sabra's inclusion in New World Order. I think it's probably already in the can, so it's more of a like, I think we're being asked to boycott the entirety of Marvel until that movie is out, over and done with, which, understood. And I don't know if it continues further after that, but we'll have to see. But in terms of that, I don't know what the remedial action would be. And again, I would send everybody to BDS directly, and to the people who create the organizations for their own communities to advocate for their own communities. You don't have to do all the work yourself. You don't have to go and research everything yourself. You just have to listen to the communities that you want to support. That's it. And, you know, part of that, even for me, is making sure that I'm not roving into anti-Semitism. So I check in on my anti-Zionist Jewish friends and I go, hey, as I'm saying this, is this okay? I'm not heading towards something else I don't want to be doing. And they keep a check on me in that way. It's not tough when you're in a community to make sure that you're looking out for everybody. So I will just say all of that, and let's keep going, because I have more to say about ethics within art. During the Super Bowl, they, in an incredibly one-sided is it an advertisement? Is it a, what is it? There was an ad paid for by the Israeli government, as far as I understand, bring all dads home, which can be hard to process when they've killed so many dads in the last 4 or 5 months. This idea of, and indiscriminately, furthermore, without any regard or heed for the safety of their own hostages that are still in Gaza, killing 3 of their own hostages as they were surrendering with a sign written in Hebrew. There is just no, and there are Israelis on the ground in Tel Aviv saying the same thing. There is an indiscrimination. There is a blanket bombing here that is going on that is both deeply, deeply, deeply ill-advised and inhumane. So an advert like that is factual. It's purely lip service. It is not action. It's not action on the part of the Israeli government, and it's not any action that any American could take to protect Israeli hostages in Gaza. It's just purely a propaganda piece. There is just nothing to be done with that other than creating a environment where Americans will be okay with the defense funding being sent to the government of Israel to carpet bomb Gaza on behalf of bringing dads home without any care for not bombing those dads they're trying to return. So that piece was difficult, especially because that very night they bombed Rafah, which is meant to be the one place in Gaza that is safe for Gazans, that is safe for Palestinians, right? Anybody that had been living in Gaza, anyone that had been living in Gaza, that entire strip, the Gaza Strip, it's called the Gaza Strip, it's literally a strip. It's this tiny little piece of land. So after the Nakba in 1948, everyone gets pushed to the four winds. By 1967, things are getting even more nebulous. And then as more and more settlers settle in Israel, more and more land is taken away until you're left with this tiny strip and a bunch of islands, essentially, in the West Bank. This strip, after October 7th, after this breach in the border on October 7th, and the attack that happened there, has basically, they've started from the top, and they have been moving people down. Now, if you are purely doing that, let's take you completely at your word, and you are purely doing that to try and target the terrorist group that attacked you on October 7th, there should be a safe zone. Anyone would say there should be a safe zone for those people to be in, right? Up until each time they've moved it down. So it starts with, you can come here. And so everyone moves here. And then they go, oh, no, actually, we need you all to move here. Oh, and now they have bombed the final place there is to go, which is Rafah. Beyond that, it's Egypt. They're out. They're gone. That's what ethnic cleansing is. That you have pushed a people by force out of the country. The whole country. You just got them whoosh out. That's ethnic cleansing, right? That night, during the Super Bowl, airing an ad while you're carpet bombing potentially a place those very dads you're trying to save are actually logically, physically, geographically. You're bombing that place and you're saying we should bring them home. I just simply don't believe you, and no one does, right? This whole project has made absolutely no sense if the goal is the safety of the hostages. No deal has come to pass that has in any way put them in a position to release those hostages at all. They have not had it. They've had multiple different chances to be able to rescue them. They have not taken them. There's a story one of my Jewish mutuals mentioned like a month after October 7th that was about 3 boys, I think, that had been murdered, or a couple of boys that had been murdered, and the IDF knew that those boys had been murdered pretty much instantly, and they didn't tell the public for weeks to make them think as if there were people there to save, and there was this whole effort going on to save these boys, only to find out they had passed away, and they'd been passed away the entire time, and it was this whole thing. And I think about that in relation to the discussion about hostages, because there have been so many opportunities, so many different deals that have almost happened, that have fallen through at the last minute when Netanyahu said, we're never going to negotiate with da-da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, if the goal, genuinely, and I think it would be a noble goal if it were the goal, was to negotiate for the release of those hostages, I think 4 months is adequate time if you're an adequate government to do so. That's my opinion. So, you air an ad, which I feel is disingenuous, the same night that you start to carpet bomb the final safe zone for Palestinians to seek refuge before they are essentially exiled from their land. And then, so I wake up in the morning, and that's the news I wake up to. And then somewhere nebulously on the internet is the discussion of new Beyonce music. And I go, right, okay, hold on, okay. Vertigo, okay, right, okay, what's happening? So, Super Bowl. If we lived in a world where there wasn't a genocide currently happening in Gaza, okay, Super Bowl, Beyonce, Renaissance, one of the biggest albums of the last couple of years, one of the biggest tours, one of the biggest artists in the world. Of course she announces new music at the Super Bowl. In the alternate universe where there is not a genocide happening in Gaza, I lose my mind and I make 8 TikToks. I go, holy shit, she's really the best. She's always been the best. I freaking love this woman. Wow. You know, between Taylor Swift kissing her bae on the field, and he wins the freaking Super Bowl or whatever, and Taylor Swift is a good luck charm, and I love that for her or whatever, even though she did a whole, you know, ridiculous flight all the way to the Super Bowl and back that was like ridiculous amounts of carbon emissions. It is what it is, sis. At this point, it's camp. It's camp that she's destroying the world. Slay. So her bae wins at the Super Bowl, as far as I understand, and Beyonce releases new music. In the alternate universe, where the Super Bowl was not used as cover to continue and or finish off a genocide in Gaza, I'm losing my mind. I'm having a great time. I'm waking up, it's fun and festive. I'm listening to new Beyonce music. Instead, the first thing on my feed is, I can't believe it. They really are bombing the final safe zone. It's not that I can't believe it, it's that's what, you know, all eyes on Rafah. They're really bombing the final place. That's it. They want people either out into Egypt or dead. This is good morning. Happy Super Bowl Monday recovery hangover. They really just, they started bombing during the Super Bowl. They just started carpet bombing this place where almost 2 million people are densely packed into an area the size of Lower Manhattan, and they just indiscriminately bombed, you know, with no regard for the hostages that may be there, with no regard for the humans that are there. Like, I don't want it to seem like I'm centering Israeli hostages here. 2 million Palestinians have been forced from the top of this tiny strip of land all the way to the bottom, and then they bombed the final bit they're all in. And then they bombed the final bit they're all in indiscriminately during the Super Bowl. No, I can't listen to the Beyonce songs right now. I'm sorry. I can't, and I still haven't. You know, I'm hearing the clips on social media and Kiki and haha, and sometimes it's good escapism, but I think I just said this on the live stream. Sometimes I ask myself, escape from what? And I think a lot of people have been doing that recently. Sometimes it's escape from getting in the weeds, right? And that's very much, I think the moment I'm really in the weeds, I will pick up the Beyonce song and I will take my escapism. But some people, and it's not a bad thing, but it's something you may want to interrogate. You take the out when actually you should be staying in, right? You take the escapism when actually we should be paying attention. And not just paying attention, you know, in the kind of performative sense, all eyes or that sense. What it is about absorbing the gravity of something that has happened, figuring out what your action is going to be as part of the community, which for me partially is being part of the strike that starts on the 17th if you're following Bisan's strike, or the 18th if you're following the general strike. Thank you to everybody that mentioned that on the live stream. There's the strike, which I will be joining. There is a ceasefire vote in the UK that you've got 4 days as of the posting of this to join, and call your MP and harass them to vote yes on a ceasefire. There are many different actions to take, and not all of them are going to be immediately apparent. But if you don't stay here in that moment, I can't believe they are bombing the finals. It's either you go to Egypt as a Palestinian, you either go to Egypt or you die. That's ethnic cleansing. We cannot allow that to happen. Like, what world do we live in that we allow that to happen? No. Okay, so you have to stay there to work out what you're going to do. You can't then go, oh my God, this is all too much. I need to listen to the new Beyonce. And, you know, there are some people I follow, some mutuals, some of whom are even Israeli, that were like, you know, Beyonce is not dumb. She did this on purpose. She's part of the effort to cover up the action that was taken. And though we may not want to understand like the mechanisms of like active participation in a political action, right, such as being part of a bread and circus while a ethnic cleansing, a genocide is being finished off, because there's just no other way to describe it. That's what's happening. There is also a level where we do have to say, regardless of, like, just think of the situation we live in, even if it was not done on purpose. Being a part of this has been going on 4 months, and being a part of such a big American event, where you are part of it being a big American event, and then having absolutely no words or acknowledgement for what has happened over the past 4 months, the deep humanitarian crisis, genocide, and ethnic cleansing that has happened in the Gaza Strip, and then releasing new music, and then no more words, no more anything, no, seeing that you have been part of that moment that has helped distract people from the gravity of this moment, and then just because there is this sense of like, and I know this intimately as a Beyonce fan, she has set herself as being apolitical and here to be an escapist route for people, to be a relief for people. And I say escapism and relief in this moment. From what? From this moment. And if we have escapism and relief from this moment, nothing changes. And I'm never the person saying that we shouldn't have modes of escapism and release and relaxation and just having a moment, right? And having our Beyonce song. But if you don't pair that, if you're Beyonce and you don't pair that with something, this is the same as Disney, just something. How many times have I said, listen, the world is weird and people can ask for you to do things with your platform that you don't want to do, and it's well within your right not to do those things. But I would ask, not even the lip service, not even the smallest of things, not even the smallest of acknowledgements. There are very, very small actions someone like Beyonce could take. Very tiny, small, basically completely neutral actions that much smaller, much less influential celebrities have already done, that I feel that her not saying or doing anything is, it's tough to sit and kiki and ha-ha and enjoy after a while, because you almost feel like it is an active distraction from things that could make things better. And this is a woman that saved my life. This is a woman that grabbed me when I was very young and said, you have a future, you can be excellent, work hard, be rabid in your approach to the excellence of your craft. As a musician, as a performer, you will be rewarded. Make the music people want to hear, give people a good time. That is a service. That is something that's important. You can be Black and beautiful and talented, and people will not be able to take it, but they can't stop you. This is someone, she grabbed me and she told me that at a very, very young age. I have been deeply attached to this woman for decades of my life. Decades. Pretty much the entirety of it, right? I understand the drive to just be an escapist release and to not be political, but she has been political, much like Taylor Swift. This woman has been political before, only when she feels that her core audience will have no issue with it. And the thing is that I would, if I even deigned to speak to the Queen about this, I would say you would be surprised how much the core audience, the genuine core audience, the majority core audience of Beyonce would appreciate anything on this. They are not saying anything and they're letting this moment pass because we all know that Beyonce's primary directive is entertainment more than anything, is a good time more than anything. But you'd be surprised the core audience is waiting, because it is a core audience that is inherently a marginalized, to some extent Black, but there are so many different types of people that enjoy Beyonce's music. She is a mainstream artist, and Palestinian freedom and liberation is a mainstream belief. It may not be a belief recognized by our governments, but it is a mainstream belief. This idea that the majority of people just want to chill out and have fun and they're not emotionally invested in the politics of Palestine. It's not that they're not emotionally invested. They just do not have the time to be as loud as the rest of us. But the majority of people want Palestine to be free. And if Beyonce said anything, it would be a moment in culture. It wouldn't necessarily need to turn the tables. It would just need to be an acknowledgement of where the rest of us are. And again, she doesn't owe anybody that, but it does make it hard for me to listen to her music when she doesn't, because she is so openly, excellently political in the other ways that matter to me. But there are levels, people have discussed this, there are levels to Beyonce's activism that exist on a plane of capitalist excellence that people don't necessarily agree with either. I don't think that this needs to be that moment. I think it can just be kids are being killed. People are being killed. They are being forced from the top of a very tiny strip of land to the bottom and out into Egypt. That's by definition ethnic cleansing. Anything. She could say anything. She could just repost a UN post about the children. Which would be the very, very smallest thing she could do. And I think it would do a lot. Not for the cause, but just purely for the culture, right? And, okay, does the culture matter more than the cause? No, but the culture buoys the cause. And the culture, to some extent, is the cause, right? The cause is bolstered and it is narrated and it is remembered, and the history books are written from the culture, right? So any moment she could take to do that it wouldn't necessarily have to be a political act. It would just need to be a cultural act of acknowledgement of these people's suffering and the loss, the metric loss and the injustice of it. That's all it would need to be. That's all it would need to be. She doesn't need to save the world. She just needs to be part of the moment with us. And again, if she doesn't, she doesn't. And in my moment where I need to disengage and my brain has been too tangled up, I will go and I'll listen to the new Beyonce. And I will get my life. It's not that I'm boycotting her. I do wish that in so many other ways that she catalogues culture, she would catalogue culture here with us too. That's it. That's all. Okay, so that's the Super Bowl. Congrats to Taylor Swift's boyfriend, husband, partner, golden retriever. Congrats to Taylor Swift's guy. I'm glad. I'm happy for him. She ate. She looked great. I wish she'd say something too. She is also someone who believes deeply in the impact of cultural, including herself within a cultural moment, and I think it would be very culturally relevant and culturally impactful if she said something. Will she change the world? Who knows? Will she change what's currently happening? Will she be able to stop a genocide? Who knows? But what she would be able to do is do what artists do, which is speak for the rest of us, right? And catalogue in the history books that this is how we are all feeling and this is what we're all supporting. So, with that being said, what else do I... Oh yeah, we're going to do music now. We're going to do music. Let me start a whole new clip and we'll talk about music. So, since UMG took all their music off TikTok, people have started having the discussion about TikTok's effect on the music industry. And we can sit and have top-level discussions about how TikTok has changed music marketing, which is to say, taking a part of a song that is musically interesting, turning it into something that can be shared and that other people can iterate on to the point that they become organic, user-generated content farms for major labels to make a song go viral. We could talk about that. I think that's pretty beaten, like dead horse beaten. What I want to talk about is musical elitism and the Rick Beato of it all, because okay, let's do this. So I deep to my core, I'm a contrarian. I believe in questioning how everything is always done, conventional wisdoms. Why do I do this? Because I want to make these things stronger. I don't ever take anything as fact until I have seen absolute unequivocal proof of it. And more importantly than all of that, I tend to err on the side of facts that are human as opposed to motivated to the benefit of other people. So for instance, who does it benefit to say that the Beatles are the best artists of all time and that the music they make is the best music ever made? Who does it benefit? I think about that constantly. And no, Christian, I will not be getting into it here. We will not have this discussion again for the 50th time. That's my friend Christian. He really likes the Beatles. I do not. Moving on. In the same way, I, from a very, 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 very young age, with the fortified moxie of being told that I was pretty good at music, have been demolishing norms around how music works each time I come across one, because they are almost always, oh my God, always coming from some rando white guy who's not even actually good at the craft. I'm never talking about audio engineers. I'm never talking about amazing guitarists. I'm never talking about amazing drummers. I'm never talking about anyone with quality musical training. I am talking about the guys who talk shit and can't even play Wonderwall. Those guys want to sit and talk day and night, up and down, about music that's of quality and not of quality. Because the thing is that when you're not good at something, you want there to be rules as to why. I know. So here's the thing. No one in music who loves music, who understands music, who sees music as an ancient lover, as a friend, who sees music as being like you can't separate music from the soul, you can't separate music from life, you can't live without music, who make music, these people of which I am a part, they will never sit in a room and tell you what music is good and what music is bad. They will never tell you what structures are good and what structures are bad. They will never tell you what songs are good and what songs are bad, what artists are good and what artists are bad. No one ever has such a rigid definition of these things, ever, if they are someone that really enjoys the art form. They will find the good in everything. When I say I don't like the Beatles, it's political. It's not, it's a political stance. It's not me sitting and going, the Beatles are inherently bad and here's why. And anyone that likes them doesn't understand real music. Although that is sometimes what I sound like. We won't get into the Beatles. They're the only exception to this rule. Every other type of artist, every other type of music, I don't have a strong opinion about. I don't. I can find the good in everything. One thing I think we all agree on, those people who are like me, who see the world, who see music and who see the world like me, insofar as like there is no real one great way to make music, or there's the complicated way to make music which is good and the simple way which is bad, and I think we all agree that if there was anybody that ever nailed being a musician, it was Prince. So once we all agree on that, everything else is like, oh, you did something interesting. Oh, you did something really interesting. There's no hierarchy. And I'm saying this for a reason, because we are going to get back to TikTok. I always find it interesting when Rick Beato makes it into my inbox, whether it's from friends, whether it's from colleagues, whether it's from some viral video, because he is doing the thing that I feel to be inherently for clicks, which get the clicks, mate. I love to see it. But in the past, he has often had a slightly judgmental view of the art form that I don't believe comes from a place of acumen. I just don't see it as, I'm not trying to start beef. Like, he can have whatever opinion he wants personally, but I think sometimes he comes across as being an arbiter of quality, which I think some people take quite seriously. And I think it would be crass of him to constantly say, this is my opinion, but it is. And I was listening to the Waveform podcast today as I was getting ready for my day, and they were talking about this UMG thing, and therefore what effect TikTok has had on music production, and they brought up Rick Beato, who I remember I if I didn't block him, I really got rid of him a long time ago, because I watched a couple of videos and I started to feel that straitjacket rigidity of the rules of music, and I just cannot abide it. I think anybody that puts a straitjacket on the arts fundamentally is trying to gatekeep. And when they gatekeep, they give away their position as being someone who is scared of their own position within the art form. Once you're feeling you need to put a ring fence around anything, in my opinion, a ring fence is merely just an admission that you are scared that you will one day not belong to this group of people. And I think it is the action of somebody that is not comfortable within their own space, within their own talent, within their own... And I think that comes from all sorts of external things in people's lives. I think sometimes the voice of an old friend or a parent can be so loud that sometimes you want to sit and analyze why you're good at something, why you're not good at something, why you're in a group or why you're out of a group, or even just the fact that you can see that those rules exist show that you are meant to be somewhere. And I've just never had that. I've never seen that not be used to harm people like me. And so I have a bias against it, because it is almost always being used against people who are doing stuff that's, and I'm not saying I'm doing stuff that's interesting, I'm just thinking of all the different people that get caught up in this not good thing. Need I go back to the burning of disco records, in Chicago? Do we need to go there? Where, there is a storied history of groups of people using the art form of music. What a crime. Using the art form of music to establish rules under which people of color can't have a good time, black people can't innovate. Rap is bad in the 90s, and now it's everything every young white kid wants to make. Disco is bad, and now every pop record is a disco record. Rock is traumatizing and corrupting our children, and then rock becomes a white art form. Like, it's almost as if reactionary music critics, by their very definition, do not operate in good faith and don't operate in the best interests of the art form. So, where does this leave TikTok? Yes, TikTok has affected music production. It has made songs shorter. It has made songs shift in context, shift in structure. They have shifted in their lyricism. They have shifted in sometimes even the sounds that are used in a record. There's this understanding of like certain beats or certain things you can do with a song that give it something that feels like this is the moment in the song that it can be used for the TikTok. But this is only because the industry adjusts, guessing, and innovates by guessing what TikTok wants. They are not going, TikTok wants XYZ, so we're going to do XYZ, and every song is going to sound like XYZ. That's not how it works. TikTok is radio. Did radio kill everything other than a radio edit? Did radio kill everything except what would work on the radio? No. TikTok has so many different genre avenues of success. It is so nebulized, so personalized, so algorithmic that it cannot have an effect on the art form that is negative. It can only have a positive one because everybody is iterating, guessing, and innovating. I don't say this to big up TikTok. I say this because anybody creating a situation where they're going, new thing bad, I'm immediately skeptical. I'm immediately skeptical because I think it's a marker of insecurity that you look at something new and immediately insist, immediately are concerned that this is going to ruin the whole thing because you only just got a handle on what you have now. But you should not be afraid if you love this art form. You should not ever be afraid of new mediums, of new avenues, of new platforms. There is no way that TikTok can kill good music. And once you put it that way, everybody seems to get it, and everybody feels a bit silly for having the discussion. Do you think TikTok is powerful enough to kill good music? Do you think it's powerful enough to create a terrible era of music? Find me a terrible era of music. I'll wait. Because just as you might say, oh, the 80s was a cesspool for music, that was Prince's Purple Rain era. Okay, so it wasn't. Well, what about the 90s? You could simultaneously go 90s was terrible. You could go 90s had Nirvana. You could say 90s had some of the burgeoning rap scene. You could say the 70s was a lull. You could say the 70s was the birth of disco. You could say, the 60s was Motown. Who's going to argue with fucking Motown? Good music can't be killed. Good music can't be iterated out of existence. Good music, by very definition, needs limitations like TikTok, needs new mediums like TikTok to innovate on. I see it as nothing but an innovation tactic, a evolution point. This discussion about whether or not the charts are this or that or the other because of the art form, this was the same conversation we were having about Spotify, and everybody seems to be very happy with the music industry that we have currently that came out of the Spotify era. No one's saying we're in an era of bad music unless they are people that are Beatles fanboys and nothing else. And I would say to them, go back to the era of the Beatles and get spat on by a bunch of older men from then. There is no era. There is just no era where the absolute of the industry is being ruined is ever true. Is ever, ever, ever true. There is too much music at any one given time, and there are too many artists. Now, if you want to start the bullshit, about, well, it's not about whether or not there is good music, it's about what gets rewarded. My dude, as much as I hate the free market, my dude, music has always resisted the free market. Like, by definition, as an art form. What goes, and what doesn't. If you don't like something that's popular, that is your prerogative. But you don't get to sit here and go, you have superior taste. Because taste is subjective. And if you can agree that taste is subjective, there is no way you can definitively... Now, I think people want to have a definition for good art because it makes the world less chaotic. But in the same way, I would say, do you know when you're going to die? I don't. Does that change the quality of my life? No. Do you know what good music is? No. Does it change the quality of the music you love? No. Chill the fuck out. Like this, it drives me a bit insane. And so this conversation around, has TikTok changed production? Yes. People make their hooks hookier. They're thinking of TikTok. And this idea that thinking for TikTok automatically means you're creating a formula. Art is art. Everyone takes the brief differently. You need to make a song that has a part in the song that is going to go viral on TikTok. Just because you don't like that motive doesn't mean that motive can only drive bad results. Some of the best hooks I've heard in the last couple of years have been from songs obviously made to do well on TikTok. The idea that profit motive and pop motive is inherently negative and can only drive bad results, and that the majority of people like bad things, and that good things only have a small amount of people listening to them at any given time, and that good things are only understood by a very small group of people. Listen, I was bullied in school too. And I like the idea that I have a superior taste as well. But I don't think it's helpful to your life to feel that way. I don't think it's helpful to the art form, and I don't think it's helpful to the artists. Because when Tame Impala decides he wants to go pop, you're not allowed to be mad. You're not. Because he's still the same guy. He's just also on the Barbie soundtrack. And the idea that you would get upset about that, or that you would sit and think about what it means that he feels he has to do this, as if it's not one of the coolest things that Tame Impala wrote a song for the freaking Barbie soundtrack, and what it means about culture that a song like that would do so well, or that an artist like that would end up on an album like that. You blind yourself to the wonder of the art form, and you drive me nuts in the process. No, this is not directed at my friend Christian, although it could be, with love and honor, and I love that man very much. But the key of what I am trying to say, I hope, is not lost. TikTok can change the art form as much as it wants. It will not kill it, and it will certainly not make the art form worse. Bad art will be made. Art you don't like will be made, but it won't be driven by an app. It won't be driven by a profit motive. Bad music exists because you just simply don't have the taste for it. It's not that bad music, there's an objectively bad music and it gets encouraged in moments where people have profit motive. No, you just don't like that kind of music, and that music is popular. So when that music gets made, and when people manage to make music to those, I think this gets to a core discussion we need to have about popular art. And I will say this to all my hipster friends, not just the one that I'm talking to currently, but just all my hipsters. I don't know how this got to him. He hasn't mentioned this in months, but it just occurred to me, like, all the arguments I was getting against me in my head, I was thinking, that's Christian talking. Sorry, Christian, you're all over this part of the podcast. Let me speak candidly. I think this discussion around popular art is primarily one where people seek to control definition. And I think a lot of people have an issue with what most people find popular because they don't feel that they're accepted by most people, or they don't feel that they understand most people, or that the things that seem to be doing well for most people don't resonate with them. And moralizing that, I feel, is setting yourself up for an identity you don't need to fulfill. So I think people know this on a tertiary level, but it's something you need to keep learning, is that, and certainly I do, because I'm not going to sit here and say that I've never done the thing that I'm saying people are doing. But I do think that it is an urge that needs to be avoided. I think it is an urge that stymies progress, actively harms, causes people to stop experimenting, causes people to stop having a sense of playfulness and joy around art. Not just in the consumption of art. Oh, I'm not telling people not to watch Barbie. No, but you are convincing people that if they wanted to pursue making Barbie, they would be a lesser artist. And I don't think that's fair, right? Wanting to pursue, I don't take any solace in being an exception. I don't take any solace in being a popular artist that is oh, but you've done something interesting. I think conflating taste with quality is always going to be something dangerous, and at its extreme it leads to the burning of disco records in a football stadium. At its extreme. And it can guise itself, it can disguise itself as being very self-righteous, as being a protector of an art form. But at the end of the day, it veers into the gatekeepiness of it all, the otheringness of it all. This is the creating the divisions and borders amongst pieces of art and movements of people. It is not a good slope to start sliding down. So the idea that TikTok is changing the art form for the worse, that things are getting shorter and smaller and faster and the structure is changing, I think you're referring to songs that you don't like. And there are so many songs that have gone viral on TikTok for exactly the same structural reasons as the songs you don't like that you will adore. Because it's not the structure of TikTok and the algorithmic advantage of TikTok that is changing the art, that is changing the art form for the worse. It is just changing the art form. And there are people that you like and people that you don't like within that same change, right? And it also, the other thing is, I think this change is overblown. I'm not hearing anything in the records that do really well that is necessarily any different. Let me run you through an example. Let's say, for instance, I have someone that we're writing a song together and they go, I want to make sure that the hook is going to do well on TikTok. I want you, as someone maybe who doesn't even make music, to answer for me, what does that mean? There are 1,000,001 ways I can do that. I could do that through the music drop. We could do that through lyrics. We could do that through relatable lyrics. We could do it through some kind of riff that we add into the production. There are 1,000,001 ways to fulfill the brief of, we want the bridge to sound like a TikTok song. We want the bridge to sound like something that could go viral. We need a part of the song that's going to go viral on TikTok. There's so many different that is just a brief. Just like saying I want to make a rock song. Just like saying I want to make a pop song. Just like saying I want to make a song about my dog. These are all briefs under which art is made. Artistic decisions are made. TikTok is not stymieing any sense of artistic expression in that sense. As a format, TikTok is not doing that. As a platform, I don't know the motives, and I don't sit here and stand for corporations. You know what time it is. I'm pissed off with them right now. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Another time. Shadow banning out the wazoo. A whole bunch of bad stuff. Like, stuff is getting muted out of nowhere that's progressing information about things. Like, anyway. And on top of that, you know, the political affiliation with China. But I will just the idea that we are living in some kind of specific era where music is being ruined right now in this specific way and we must stop it. Oh, it's so bad. It's dangerous. It's really dangerous to safeguard pop culture in a way that is, and I would say, with love and respect and honor to all the white dudes that really love music but who are clearly not the dudes that hang out with me and are like really chill about these things. To all of you who I have a lot of love for, maybe always ask yourself whether the music you believe is bad is just because you don't relate to it and you've been told that anything you don't relate to is inherently bad. Right? If I try to explain Kim Petras to somebody that enjoys Bon Iver, it's not gonna fucking work. Kim Petras is for a very different audience. Many artists are for very different audiences. Not all art is meant to nail it for you. But the existence of it doesn't mean the atrophy of the art form. And the fact that that art is more popular than the art you like does not mean an injustice has been done. Okay? Let's just... There's that. And also I will say, this is never a conversation had by people that are like very, 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 very musical. Like I am friends with a lot of audio engineers. They are just as likely to listen to Kim Petras as they are to listen to Bon Iver, as they are to listen to Beyonce, as they are to text me about Taylor Swift. Some of them are Taylor Swift stans, like dead ass, mostly because of their girlfriends, but I think they would have got there eventually themselves. The industry recognizes the industry and doesn't see any boundaries. The boundaries only get established when people feel they're trying to grasp onto. Now, I'll say one thing. There is one part of the industry that is very judgmental about different types of art, and it's usually the management A&R side of things, but it tends to be in the opposite direction. It tends to be in the like, everything's bad until it's successful and then it's really good, and let's try and do another one. But that's different. That's a whole other conversation. Anyway, in conclusion, and I will talk about how TikTok has affected my process. Do I think it's affected it much? No, because like I said, it's an approach thing. It's not a prescription. There's not one way to have a TikTok hit. It's about making something that the audience. This is fundamentally what people do. They are making parts of their songs that can be shared with the audience for co-creation. It's so that the audience can join in with the artist and make something together. That becomes the promotional vehicle under which the song does well. That happens with frickin' Sabrina Carpenter, Renee Rapp, and that happens all the way down with UMNIA and, you know, all my friends that are on TikTok, my mutuals. We are all making songs that can be shared. Primarily, we make the song from the position of pure artistic integrity, and then we go, let's pick this bit out. This bit makes a lot of sense as an individual clip, and that could do well on TikTok. I don't think people write towards it often unless they are major artists, in which sense they're thinking more commercially minded, which doesn't mean they're making bad art. Speaking of commercial artists that has never made bad art, Whitney frickin' Houston. What, you're gonna sit here and tell me, you're gonna sit here and try and explain to me how pop music is really like, oh well, she's the exception. She's not the exception. Whitney Houston is pop music. She's literally pop music. Anyway, we're not gonna keep having this discussion. That's all I have to say about that. Yeah, now it's time for me to talk to the patrons about how all of what I just said applies to me. as a musician and an artiste. And I will talk to the rest of you next week. Bye.